Ukrainian forces launched a counteroffensive in the Kursk region and advanced several kilometers at lightning speed. As Forbes analyst David Axe writes, to advance so far and so quickly, the Ukrainians appear to have employed the same tactics the Russians employ in their most successful offensives, but with a twist. The Ukrainians did what the Russians usually do, probed the enemy lines for weak points, then deployed fast-moving armored forces to move infantry to new positions behind the original line of contact, the analyst writes. As Axe explains, the infantry-led probe and assault tactic, enabled by fast-moving vehicles, was perfected by the Russian military after Ukrainian mines, drones, artillery and anti-tank missiles made mass mechanized assaults impractical, if not suicidal. The Russians, outnumbered 3-1 or more in manpower on many parts of the front, routinely send small groups of infantry toward the Ukrainian lines, assuming that most of the scouts will die, but apparently hoping that a few will discover gaps in the Ukrainian defenses. The first to go are the expendable infantry, says the Royal United Services Institute in London. As groups are destroyed by defensive fire, Russian forces will send further groups forward along the same line of approach. Ukrainian forces must continually defend their positions against successive waves, expending ammunition, exposing defensive positions and wearing down personnel. In cases where Russian manpower outnumbers Ukrainian firepower, the Russians could take control of weakened Ukrainian positions. Axe points out that the main difference between the Russian and Ukrainian versions of this offensive tactic is that the Russians have a surplus of troops, while the Ukrainians do not. Therefore, the Ukrainians must use a different approach to probing Russian lines before the main attack. Ukraine's advantage in drones helps, but the presence of Ukrainian Special Forces teams near Ukraine's most successful attacks may hint at another advantage Ukraine has, one that allows for probing operations that are not suicidal for intelligence officers. The analyst writes. He points out that the Ukrainian Navy's 73rd Special Operations Center, essentially Ukraine's Navy SEALs, is based in Kursk, near the launch site of the recent counteroffensive. The center's mission is to gather critical intelligence on hostile forces. Highly trained Ukrainian commandos have a better chance of surviving a risky reconnaissance mission than untrained Russian conscripts. Thus, Ukrainian attacks may be less costly than Russian ones, which is important for the Ukrainian military, which has difficulty mobilizing sufficient troops. Axe concludes. Reserve Major of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Alexei Getman stated that the counteroffensive of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation is successful and will continue, so there will be more good news soon. The military of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade, Magura, reported that the Russians have changed their tactics during the assaults in the Kursk direction. Thus, if earlier they attacked mainly with equipment, now they have thrown infantry into the assault. It is reported that the enemy is moving both through fields and open areas. They are brought to narrow plantings on buggies, where they subsequently begin to hide under the trees. Sometimes Russian soldiers flee from battle.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said an elevated U.S. security partnership with South Korea and Japan poses a grave threat to his country and vowed to further bolster his nuclear weapons program, state media reported Sunday. According to Associated Press, in a speech marking the 77th founding anniversary of the Korean People's Army on Saturday, Kim said the U.S. Japan-South Korea trilateral security partnership established under a U.S. plot to form a NATO-like regional military bloc is inviting military imbalance on the Korean peninsula and raising a grave challenge to the security environment of our state, according to the official Korean Central News Agency. Referring to a series of new plans for rapidly bolstering all deterrence including nuclear forces, he clarified once again the unshakable policy of more highly developing the nuclear forces, KCNA said. Amid stalled diplomacy with the US and South Korea in recent years, Kim has focused on enlarging and modernizing his arsenal of nuclear weapons. In response, the United States and South Korea have expanded their bilateral military exercises and trilateral training involving Japan. North Korea has lashed out at those drills, calling them rehearsals to invade the country. In his Saturday speech, Kim also reaffirmed that North Korea will invariably support and encourage the just cause of the Russian army and people to defend their sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. Kim accused the US of being behind the war machine which is stirring up the tragic situation of Ukraine. North Korea now marks two major army anniversaries. The February 8th anniversary has been revived in recent years. It is intended to mark the start of the North's conventional army in 1948. The other big military anniversary on April 25 marks a date when North Korea's official version of history says that former leader Kim Il-sung started a guerrilla force to fight Japanese occupation in 1932.